Whenever an incident happens in our industry, it often seems far away. It doesn't directly affect us. So we pause for a moment, read about it perhaps, and then carry on with our work, believing that the incident is not related to how we do our jobs. We're confident that it couldn't happen here. But it can. Incidents can happen to us, and they can harm you or someone you know. Process safety incident is caused by many factors. When investigators look into an incident that seemed to happen in just a split second, they often find a chain of events that go back days, months, even years. In that chain, there may be errors, or shortcuts taken, or decisions made without proper information, or work done in a particular way simply because it has always been done that way. And even though there were safety barriers in place, human actions might have caused them to fail. How people assess risk, make decisions, and take action influence the health of the barrier. The weakness in a barrier may not be immediately obvious, but over time, as operating conditions change and people move on, these weaknesses increase the likelihood of serious incidents. That means that we need to believe that something may go wrong each and every day, whatever our task and wherever we are. It means, for the sake of ourselves and our colleagues, we must behave as if we're the only barrier between us and an incident. Bad things can happen to you and to each one of us. That's why it's so important that you understand what can go wrong and the role you play in owning and looking after the barriers that prevent incidents from happening. Now let's pause a moment and remember all the people that lost their lives on Piper Alpha and in all other process safety-related incidents. In Part 1, we learned that process safety incidents are usually part of a chain of events. To prevent them, we put a series of controls or barriers in place. We can represent this with what we call the bow tie. It's a diagram which shows possible threats and the associated barriers on the left side, with the unwanted event in the middle, and all the possible consequences with the safety barriers designed to contain the incident, such as detection and emergency response, on the right side. There's one story that brings a bow tie to life perfectly. It's about a seemingly ordinary valve that wasn't quite right. And then one ordinary day, when a worker closed another nearby valve, a chain of decisions and actions made by a number of people led to that explosion, even though a series of barriers intended to prevent it were in place. Design barriers, inspection and testing barriers, operational barriers, all failed. The story starts with an automatic shutdown valve that needed to be replaced. A buyer in contracting and procurement ordered the valve from a recently approved new supplier. The vendor did not have a valve that perfectly matched the old one, and the purchaser chose a similar valve without noticing it had a slightly different material specification. The purchaser did not confirm with the engineer whether the valve was suitable for his requirements. It was a small mistake, an oversight, but one that will have far-reaching consequences. The new valve was purchased, delivered, and then installed. Nobody knew that the valve was different. Because it was from a new vendor, it didn't appear in the database, and the team installing it assumed the right valve was delivered to site. Those decisions meant that the design and construction barrier had failed. but no one knew that. The valve was in place, and it worked fine. But because it was made from slightly different materials, corrosion triggered by the fluids in the pipe caused it to start degrading, internally, where no one could see it. There was an inspection program to monitor the wall thickness of the system where the valve was installed. However, it only checks the pipes, and not the valves, because they are manufactured with thicker walls. The automatic shutdown valve was also tested regularly, but routine testing would not identify the valve was gradually being degraded. So the important inspection and testing barriers did not identify the developing corrosion. The next barrier intended to protect us from an incident was an operational one. Normally, all the valves on this system are never closed at the same time to avoid the risk of increasing the pressure to a level that would trigger a pressure relief valve. All operators are trained and tested to make sure they know that. But on this day, a trainee operator was asked to isolate one part of the facility, let's call it System A, in preparation for maintenance. However, System A is identical to and located right next to System B, which contains the badly corroded valve. The fact that he was a trainee shouldn't cause problems, because during critical operations, the supervisor always accompanies an operator under training to prevent mistakes. But the supervisor wasn't accompanying the new operator. He was in the office, dealing with an overflowing inbox. He'd clearly explained that the valve that needed to be closed was on System A, but the new operator got confused and didn't feel he could stop work to go and check. So he closed the wrong valve on System B. The system pressure built up quickly, and the corroded valve started to leak. The incident very nearly ended in tragedy. Luckily, a gas detector picked up the leak and initiated the alarm. The operator and everyone else in the area got clear just before the gas plume ignited. No one was hurt, but it could have been very different. A series of barriers failed to stop a wrong valve being purchased, installed, and put into operation. Luckily, one barrier, the gas detection system and the emergency response procedures, on the right-hand side of the bow tie, proved to be robust. This incident shows that a number of barriers can fail one after the other if the people responsible for them don't own them and prove that they are working. So own your barrier. The owner of the gas detection barrier saved lives that day. The story of the valve shows just how important our actions are. Wherever we work and whatever we do, we are linked to a barrier. There are two types of barrier: hardware barriers and human barriers. Hardware barriers are the physical, engineered equipment that is designed to prevent a hazard being released and causing harm. Things like a pressure relief valve, a bund, or a detection system. Human barriers are the actions people take that prevent a hazard from doing harm. For example, an operator doing their regular rounds to check for warning signals on equipment, or completing a thorough risk assessment before starting work. Both types of barrier are supported by critical processes, which are the systems and rules that define how a site is operated safely. But it is people that make barriers work. We can see this in our three-petal asset integrity diagram, which is made up of design integrity, operating integrity, and technical integrity. All are important to ensure equipment does what it should do and our products are kept in the pipe. And in the middle, tying everything together, we have integrity leadership. We're all connected by a chain of care for each other. It's a chain that extends from every part of the company to every other part of it, and across the years. CARE encourages you to be vigilant and ask questions, to always be cautious about good news, and to welcome the bad news, as it can really help us improve. CARE creates a feeling of unease that will help keep us and our colleagues safe. It's a feeling that ensures we check and double-check that everything is okay until we're completely satisfied. We work in a hazardous industry, and we can do it safely. Don't accept barriers not being maintained. Don't accept leaks as part of the job. Feel responsible for yourself and your colleagues, even those you've never met and don't know. Know your role. Know your barriers. Know that they are healthy and be able to prove it. Own your barrier and take care of it.